On July 1st, 2000, police constables were called to the scene of a hit-and-run fatality in Brampton, Ontario, Canada. 65-year-old Frank Groves was lying in the road deceased. A broken reflector near the body suggested the victim had been riding a bicycle, but there wasn't a bike in the immediate area. Down the road and around a corner, they found a mangled bike and then an abandoned vehicle a bit further down the street. The car had been reported stolen, so they weren't able to identify the driver that way. They still assumed it was an accident, though, as most auto collisions are, but it wasn't long before something stood out to the investigating officer. There were no skid marks near the body. Even if the driver hadn't seen the cyclist, they would have hit the brakes upon impact based on reflex. There were no signs that the driver had made any effort to stop, though there were skid marks where the car had been abandoned, so the brakes worked. By the end of the day, authorities were sure that the impact was no accident. Evidence suggested the driver had intentionally hit Frank as he rode his bike. Now the detectives needed to find the murderer. This is Monsters. Jeffrey Campbell was born around 1978 in Windsor, Ontario, and he showed destructive tendencies from a very young age. He lit his first fire when he was 3 years old and would end up lighting 10 more over the next 3 years. One of those fires was set on his 4-year-old cousin's pajamas, which led to serious burns. His mother had already given one child up for adoption when she got pregnant with Jeffrey at 17. His genes hadn't done him any favors, as his father had died during a police chase when Jeffrey was less than a year old. His mother moved on to an alcoholic boyfriend who beat both her and Jeffrey over the next few years. She managed to escape the boyfriend, but Jeffrey continued his aggressive behavior and she surrendered him to child services when he was 6. He remained in either treatment centers or youth detention facilities, eventually meeting the older half-brother that had been surrendered before he was born. His mother would later say that encounter hindered the progress he had been making. Between the ages of 12 and 17, Jeffrey received 22 convictions for a variety of crimes, 6 being assaults, 3 of those against peace officers. When Jeffrey was 15, he became a father with the birth of his first son. His mother did her best to straighten out her life so she could take custody of the boy. A few years later, he had another son and was back behind bars shortly after. His mother now has custody of both children. As an adult, Jeffrey's violence only increased. When he was 19, he was dating a 16-year-old single mother named Mary Beth Williams for a short time. On October 9, 1997, she was found dead in her apartment with her 3-month-old son crying in his crib. It was determined that Mary Beth had been strangled, but no suspects were identified and the case went cold. Jeffrey continued to be in and out of prison for minor offenses, but in the summer of 2000, he was a free man. He and his girlfriend Ellen had gone to a party in a field on June 30th. Everyone was drinking and having a good time, but then Jeffrey's anger was set off by a minor disagreement. He ended up punching and kicking another partygoer, but when he managed to get away and flee, Jeffrey followed him. He was afraid that the victim was going to go to the police, so he jumped in Ellen's car with a couple of friends and gave chase. Before they made it out of the wooded area where the party had been, Jeffrey ran the victim off the road, doing damage to both vehicles. Ellen was not pleased, so she yelled at her boyfriend and drove away, leaving Jeffrey and his buddies stranded. They ended up stealing a car and going out to cause more trouble into the early hours of the next morning. On July 1st, 2000, Frank Groves got up early and started his usual routine. He and his wife Arlene had been married for 42 years and Frank had recently retired from Northern Telecom and the couple were in the process of selling their house. They were avid cyclists, not even owning a car, and at 65, Frank made sure he cycled or went swimming every day to stay in shape. The morning on July 1st was no different. He would leave the house at about 5 a.m., cycle down to a local coffee shop and read the paper. As he rode down Elliott Street, Jeffrey, driving a stolen Dodge Shadow, sped up and intentionally rammed into him from behind. Frank flew off the bike, landed on the hood of the car, rolled up the windshield, and then onto the ground. The coroner believes he died instantly. The bike got stuck under the vehicle and left a long gouge mark in the pavement between the impact and where the bike finally dislodged from under the car. It was right around the corner onto a road that was blocked off by construction. Not being able to go further and with a shattered windshield, Jeffrey and his buddies chose to abandon the car right there. When the Dodge Shadow was dusted for prints, they found a very clear shoe print on the windshield with a really unique tread design. They eventually got a tip that led them to a man named Chuck Anderson, who had a record for car theft. When the detectives went to his apartment to interview him, there was a matching pair of shoes sitting right inside the door. He didn't give them any information, and he agreed to take a polygraph, which came back inconclusive. With no evidence to hold Chuck, they let him go, but they made a habit out of showing up to his usual haunts often, which started to give him a bad reputation. That pressure got him to tell the detectives that they should talk to a different local car thief named Shorty. He told them that Shorty also owned a pair of the same shoes. Not only that, Chuck said that Shorty had been in some incident in July that caused him to burn his clothes, though Chuck didn't know exactly what had happened. It took a while to track Shorty down, but once they did, he took off running. He was quickly apprehended, and it didn't take long for him to tell the detectives everything. He explained that they had stolen a car in the morning of July 1st, and while Jeffrey was driving, they saw a man on a bicycle up ahead. Shorty claimed that Jeffrey said, quote, "Watch this." Then he sped up and ran into the cyclist. After the windshield got smashed, Shorty put his foot up on it to keep it from caving in on them. Shorty's cousin was in the back seat, and when they interviewed him separately, he gave them the same story. Once the detectives looked up information on Jeffrey Campbell, their theory that Frank was hit on purpose was easily verified. They saw his long rap sheet involving violence to both people and animals. Then they got some good news. Jeffrey was already in jail serving 3 months for the assault he committed just hours before the murder of Frank. Unfortunately, the two friends had criminal histories and wouldn't make credible eyewitnesses, so once Jeffrey was released from jail, he was placed under surveillance. They caught him threatening people, and then they caught him almost try to rob someone with a shotgun. Before he could, though, a patrol officer just happened to drive by and Jeffrey ran off. Eventually, investigators decided he was too much of a danger and they needed to arrest him immediately. Jeffrey had absolutely no motive to kill Frank Groves. He simply did it for the thrill. When Jeffrey was evaluated by psychologists, he was given a test that measures psychopathy. The Hare Psychopathy Checklist gives a score of up to 40, with anyone scoring over 30 being considered a psychopath in the US and Canada. Jeffrey scored a 38. As a comparison, Paul Bernardo scored a 35 and Ted Bundy scored a 39. Basically, Jeffrey Campbell has almost no empathy for other life, and society would never be safe with him free. At his trial, he pleaded guilty to the murder, which would have given him a life sentence, but the prosecutor asked the judge to give him dangerous offender status. That wouldn't take away any chance of parole for Jeffrey, but it would slow the process of rehabilitation, which made this a rare case where the defense was actually arguing for a life sentence. It didn't help that his girlfriend Ellen had described how he tried to make her hit another cyclist on the road after the murder of Frank Groves, not only encouraging her to do it, but grabbing the steering wheel and trying to force the car into the cyclist. Fortunately, she was able to miss the potential victim, but Jeffrey's violence didn't stop there. After his arrest, he assaulted another man being held in jail on murder charges. It's also important to note that there is no known treatment for psychopathy. Now, showing psychopathic traits does not mean you'll be a murderer or even violent. Many people in high levels of corporate management score higher on the Hare Psychopathy Checklist, but if you are a violent psychopath, the chances of you being treated to no longer be violent are very low. At the end of the day, Jeffrey was given the dangerous offender status, and he would continue to prove that was the right decision. In 2008, Jeffrey contacted police from prison and admitted to the 1997 murder of Mary Beth Williams. He had eventually become a suspect, but investigators never had enough evidence to arrest him. He likely admitted to the crime while in prison because no more time could be added to his sentence. In the unlikely event that he was released, if he was found guilty of the 1997 murder, he would be sent back to prison, but this way he could be convicted and not have his sentence affected. The same thing happened again in 2024 when Jeffrey tried to strangle another inmate with an electrical cord. The prosecutor asked for 6 months to be added to his sentence, but it wouldn't change his current life sentence. At least not on paper. Obviously, the ongoing violence Jeffrey continues to carry out will encourage the courts to never remove his dangerous offender status, and he will never be granted parole. He will remain in prison since he continues to prove that he is in fact a monster. Thanks for watching This Is Monsters. New episodes are uploaded twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. There are occasional bonus episodes covering unsolved cases and criminal history. If you have a suggestion for a case you think I should cover, leave it in the comments. You can always follow the channel on Instagram at thisis_monsters and purchase merch at thisismonsters.com. Thanks so much, and be safe.